When a quiet afternoon brings her neighbor's 25-year-old son to her doorstep, Savannah never expects a simple writing request to ignite something deeper. In the hush of shared stories, gentle glances and lingering touches, an unexpected bond forms, warm, intimate, and impossible to ignore. Please don't forget to subscribe and comment. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the light comes through the curtains just right, and everything outside feels suspended in a slow-motion hush. I had just finished watering the plants on the windowsill, the ones that somehow survived my neglect over the years. The house was still, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound accompanying the occasional creak of the old floorboards under my bare feet. I was settling into my reading chair, my favorite one, a little frayed on the edges but shaped just right from years of use, when there was a knock at the door. Not loud, just a soft, unsure knock. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I assumed it was someone from the neighborhood, maybe a package delivery I had to sign for. When I opened the door, I saw Eli, my neighbor's son. He was standing there in a faded hoodie and jeans, a little fidgety, holding a notebook under his arm. I hadn't seen him much since he came home from college for the summer. He was always polite but quiet, the kind of guy who kept his eyes down and said, "Ma'am," even when you told him not to. "Hi, Miss Collins," he said, glancing up at me with those shy brown eyes. I smiled. "Savannah," I said. "You're 25 now. I think you can drop the miss." That made him smile just a little, and he nodded. "Right. Savannah. I was wondering if I could ask for your help with something." I stepped aside, waving him in. The scent of coffee and lavender drifted faintly from the kitchen. "Of course. Come in, Eli. Everything okay?" He hesitated at the threshold, then stepped in and looked around like he was entering a museum. "Yeah, I didn't want to bother my mom. She's working, and I remember you used to be a teacher." I led him to the kitchen and poured him a glass of iced tea, then sat across from him at the table. He sat down his notebook and tapped the cover nervously. "I'm taking a summer course in writing, English comp, and I have to write a personal essay about something meaningful. But I don't know how to start. I keep writing and deleting. I figured maybe someone like you, who's lived a full life, could give me some perspective." That caught me off guard. I hadn't thought of myself as someone people turn to for wisdom. I was retired, widowed, and mostly spent my time talking to my plants or the checkout girl at the market. But something in his voice, uncertain and sincere, made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, needed. "All right," I said gently, leaning forward. "Tell me what you've written so far." He opened the notebook, flipping through pages of crossed-out lines and scattered thoughts. There were bits about his dad leaving, about feeling like he never quite measured up, and about being scared to share what he really felt with anyone. I listened, really listened, and for a while he just talked. The conversation moved from his class to things I never expected he'd share with me, how isolated he'd felt since high school, how he didn't feel like he belonged anywhere, not even with his friends. As he spoke, I found myself watching him differently. Not as the awkward teenager I used to wave to from across the fence, but as someone slowly peeling back layers, allowing himself to be vulnerable. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as he turned a page. I reached out instinctively, resting my hand on his, just for a second. A gesture of comfort. Maybe more. He looked at me, his eyes filled with something between gratitude and confusion, and I realized how long it had been since someone looked at me like that, like I had something inside worth holding on to. Not just a neighbor, not just an older woman who knew how to make good pie or remembered everyone's birthday, but a person. A soul. There was a pause in the room, soft and still, the kind of pause where a single breath can shift everything. I pulled my hand back slowly and smiled, breaking the silence. "You're not as lost as you think," I said. "You just haven't told your truth yet." He nodded, swallowing hard. "How do I even begin?" "You begin," I said, "right here. With this moment. With honesty." We spent the next hour writing together. I told him stories from my past. Not all of them pretty, but all of them true. He listened, really listened, and I could see his confidence building with each sentence he wrote. It wasn't just about the assignment anymore. It was about something deeper, a connection forming. When he stood to leave, the sun had started to dip, casting a golden hue across the hardwood floor. He turned to me at the door and said, "Thank you, Savannah. You don't know how much this meant." And I knew, somehow, this wouldn't be the last time he came over. Not just for help with homework, but for something neither of us fully understood yet. And maybe that was okay. Because sometimes, the moments that change us the most don't come with fanfare. They come quietly. With a knock at the door. The next time Eli came by, it was raining, a soft, steady drizzle, the kind that made everything smell like earth and memory. I had just lit a cinnamon candle in the living room and was halfway through folding a basket of laundry when I heard the knock again, gentle like last time. But this time, I already knew who it would be. I opened the door, and there he was, hoodie pulled over his head, drops of rain dotting his sleeves. He gave me a sheepish smile. "Sorry. I should have called first." "It's fine," I said, stepping aside. "You're always welcome." He took off his shoes at the door and looked around, as if checking to make sure nothing had changed. I don't know why, but something in his presence calmed the space around him. Maybe it was the way he moved slowly, thoughtfully, or the way his eyes scanned the room like he was soaking in something more than furniture and walls. "I brought something," he said, unzipping his backpack. "I wanted to show you the essay." He handed me a printed copy, the edges slightly curled from being carried around. I sat down on the couch and began to read. It was beautiful. He wrote about our first conversation, about the iced tea, the way I listened, the stories I shared. He even mentioned the light that came in through my kitchen window and how it made him feel like time had stopped. But what struck me the most was the honesty in his words. He wrote about feeling seen, really seen, for the first time in a long while. When I looked up, he was watching me. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between hope and worry. "You have a voice," I said, my fingers still on the page. "A real one. And it matters." He exhaled, shoulders relaxing. I was scared to turn it in. I didn't know if it was too personal. "Personal is good," I said. "It's what makes people care." He nodded, then sat beside me, closer than last time. Not too close, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his shoulder through the space between us. The candle flickered softly on the side table. Outside, the rain kept falling, a rhythm that filled the silence between us without needing to be broken. "I'm not sure why," he said quietly, "but I feel like I can talk to you about anything." That touched something deep in me. It's not easy to explain, but when you reach a certain age, people stop looking at you like you're someone they can confide in. You become the wise neighbor, the harmless elder, the woman who waves from the porch. But Eli didn't see me like that. He saw me. There was a long pause. I reached over and gently touched his wrist. "I'm glad you do. You're safe here." He nodded. "I believe you." His eyes lingered on mine for just a moment too long, and I felt something shift. Not in a dangerous way, not inappropriate. Just unspoken awareness. A line we hadn't crossed. Maybe didn't need to. But its presence was undeniable. We spent the next hour talking about his dad, who hadn't called in months. About how he sometimes felt like a ghost in his own home. I shared more about my husband, Gerald. How quiet our house became after he passed. The echoes of routines no longer needed. The loneliness you learn to dress in casual clothes so no one asks too many questions. "You're not like anyone I know," he said. "You're not either," I replied. At some point, he leaned back on the couch, and I let my head rest on the cushion too. We just sat like that, side by side, listening to the rain. There was something peaceful about it. No pressure to speak. No need to explain. Just presence. Before he left, he turned to me at the door and asked, "Do you think it's weird that we talk like this?" I shook my head. "No. I think it's rare." He smiled, then hesitated. "Can I come by again? Maybe just to hang out, even if I don't need help with anything." "Of course," I said. "Whenever you want." He stood there for a second longer, like he wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words. Then he left, the sound of the rain swallowing his footsteps as he disappeared into the misty evening. I stood at the door for a long while after, wondering what exactly this was becoming. Wondering if maybe, in a world full of distractions and noise, Two people could quietly find something meaningful in the spaces in between. I didn't have the answer yet. I knew it wasn't the end of the story. Not by far. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Eli would stop by every few afternoons, sometimes with a notebook, sometimes with nothing but that quiet presence of his that somehow filled the entire room. I didn't question it. Not at first. There was a comfort to it, like hearing a familiar song on the radio when you didn't even realize you needed it. One Tuesday evening, I was in the kitchen making pot roast when I heard the now familiar knock. I didn't rush. I didn't have to. When I opened the door, there he was, hands in his pockets, hair tousled by the breeze, and that soft look in his eyes I had come to recognize. He looked older lately, more sure of himself somehow, but still carried that boyish uncertainty in the way his shoulders slouched just slightly. "Smells good," he said, stepping inside. "I didn't mean to interrupt dinner." "You didn't," I said, smiling. "I made too much anyway. Sit, you're staying." He didn't argue. We fell into an easy rhythm, me stirring at the stove, him leaning against the counter, talking about his class, his mother's job stress, his uncertainty about what came next in life. And I listened, offering what thoughts I could, though I didn't pretend to have all the answers. Dinner was quiet, warm, and comfortable. He complimented my cooking, said it reminded him of how his grandmother used to cook when he was little. I laughed and told him not to flatter me. I knew full well the roast was a little overdone. After we finished, I made tea, and we moved to the couch. It was late now, the soft hum of crickets sneaking in through the cracked window. The lights were dim, and the candle from a few days ago had burned down to a stub, its scent barely lingering. We sat in silence for a while, sipping slowly. Then he spoke, his voice low. "I feel like I don't know what I'm supposed to become. Everyone expects something from me, but I'm not even sure I want those things." I turned to him. "It's okay not to know. Most people are just pretending they do anyway." He looked at me, really looked. "You always know what to say." I smiled gently. "That's just age, sweetheart. You start to realize that most questions don't have neat answers." He nodded, then shifted closer. The edge of his knee brushed mine just barely. My heart fluttered, not in the way it once did when I was young and foolish, but in a way that reminded me I was still here. Still alive. Still capable of feeling something real. "I've never told anyone this," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "But sometimes, I feel like I'm not really seen. Not for who I am. Just what people expect." The honesty in his voice hit me harder than I expected. I reached over and placed my hand over his. Not romantic. Not calculated. Just human. "I see you, Eli," I said softly. He didn't pull away. He didn't flinch. He just breathed steady and deep. Then something happened. Not sudden. Not shocking. Just natural. He turned his hand over and gave mine a steady, respectful squeeze. "Savannah," he said softly, "you make me feel grounded. Like I can finally breathe again." Please don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon for more interesting